Today we have a fun, quick little video where we're making up some basing sheets. And these are perfect for making in bulk and then using to base our armies and our models. We've got a few different options here that we've recently made up. We're going to go over it, and conveniently, there's not much that you actually need for them. These basing sheets are actually very simple, and all we need is some clay and some PVA. We are also going to need a silicone sheet, which we can use to dry it all on. And then from there, it's just a case of mixing and waiting, and we get a perfect outcome. We need to grab some PVA and some clay. Here we are using some clear PVA, although white PVA also seems to work fine. Taking the two elements, we can start to mix these together in some form of vessel. This will take a little bit of effort and time if we are mixing it by hand. However, mixing it by hand does give us better control on the mixing amount and the size of pieces. At minimum, we want all of the PVA liquid to be covered and coloured with our clay. From there, it is a case of the clump size management. We want to make sure that the remaining clay is broken down into chunks of suitable sizes. This mixing process is what gives us the various outcomes that we're looking for. If we are leaving larger chunks and quite a few of them, we will get a really dense rocky surface. Whereas if we are being really meticulous and essentially grinding all of the clay into pretty much a fine powder, we end up with a really soft outcome. So it is just a case of making sure that we're mixing the right ratio and getting the textured outcome that we want. The advantage of this is, unlike normal clay, which will dry really solid and end up cracking, the PVA gives it a slightly plasticky elastic so that it's more able to be shaped to our base and we're able to cut it out. It is still slightly brittle in some of the larger clay sections, but overall it is a really nice simple way that we can cut around for our bases. Once we have suitably mixed up our amount of clay and PVA, what we want to do is spread this out into a sheet. And for this we will need to use a silicone mat. By using a silicone mat, the clay will not stick to it, so we're able to remove it later on, meaning that we can leave the whole thing to dry. There are two stages that we can work with this. First is the very simple fully cured option. This will be leaving the sheet until everything is completely dry, and then the silicone basing sheet will just peel away from each other, giving us a really nice clean finish. The other option is to wait until the piece is around 80% dry, flip it over and then peel off the silicone mat while the underside is drying. This will give us both a separate texture on the bottom to the top, but may also give us a beneficial wafer sheet, which is the remaining elements that will be stuck to the silicone sheet while it's drying. Once our sheeting is all dry, it is then just a case of taking a base and pushing it up against the back, and we can draw a disc round. Then using a pair of clippers, we can cut that bit of clay sheeting out and use super glue to glue it to our base, painting them up in whatever style we want, whether it's a rocky mountain face, whether it's a deserty base, or an alien planet. It's entirely up to you. For example, this is one of the wafer sheets. It's essentially like clay and PVA wallpaper, meaning that we have a really thin texture. Alternatively, we have the previously looked at larger panels. Now, as I know, we can use these for bases. I have done on a couple of models, and I've also made up some examples for this video. But there are a couple of other things that I've had thoughts that you could potentially use this for, and I'd be interested if you could let us know down in the comments, are there any other use cases that you could think of for a similar type of thing? For example, you could potentially use this as cliff faces for flat scened dioramas or something similar. Obviously, the benefit of this also being clay is that if you want to add clay items to it, they will stick slightly easier than clay to plastic, which doesn't really stick very well at all. Now, hopefully you've seen the outcomes of these. There are different styles of grit. We've essentially got thin, medium, and then large, and hopefully you can see the difference there. Now, if you are still interested in more options on basing, but not so much the clay and PVA options, why not check out this video here, and hopefully that will pique your interest. Otherwise, you are going to need to subscribe so that we can see you next time.